So here we go. Daniel, he's just connecting now. So this is the first Berlin Collective virtual studio visit. Hey, Daniel.
Hi.
Great
That's
to
great.
see
So
you.
I'm kind of have to duck down. Hi.
Hey, this is great. So I was just welcoming everyone thank you so much for being our first studio visit for the Berlin Collective. I just wanted to explain a little bit about the Berlin Collective before we get started.
Great.
So it's an international artist platform, and this is Instagram, and this live feed is perfect because we can talk to people all over the place, everywhere internationally. So this right now we're talking with Daniel, who's in the Bronx, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm in New Jersey. So this is a great opportunity to learn about and see your work and learn about all different types of people's work in our series. So the way that this is going to work today is first I was just going to do an introduction and introduce Daniel, but he's already there. And then we were going to have questions at the end. So we can have, people can ask questions. So first Daniel and I will have a dialogue, and then we'll have questions in the last part. So in about like 30 minutes or something like that. Or like 25, we'll see how we go. So Daniel, Daniel's work is he's a conceptual painter, and we met actually in Berlin. So this is like perfect for the Berlin Collective. I've always been a huge fan of Daniel's work, and this has been a great opportunity to get to know his work further and dig a little deeper and understand more about his process. And it's not as it seems on the surface whatsoever, as he's a conceptual artist. So it's really a great opportunity. So Daniel is from Urbana?
Urbana.
Urbana, sorry. Urbana. Urbana.
I would know that.
As you pronounce it, in Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to the University of Chicago?
That's right, yeah.
For your BA?
Yeah, yes, correct. Yeah.
And that was in literature, correct?
Yes, I studied both literature and art. And yeah, University of Chicago is a general liberal arts, college. So
Right.
You have courses in all kinds of things. Most of the courses I took there, no matter what you study, you have to take a lot of courses where you're basically reading primary texts by philosophers and sociologists, different people, and discussing them in groups, even if you study medicine, whatever. So
yeah, and I didn't actually know that you went to Academy of Kunst in Berlin too.
Yeah. I went to the UDK for about 2.5 or 3 years. I was basically like a guest student there. A friend of mine told me that the professors there will let you join their class if you kind of like meet with them and they like you and you get along.
Right.
So that with Leiko Ikimura, who's one of the professors there. I knew people in that class, and she allowed me to join. So I was there for a few years. And in addition to being in the class, I took other courses. I did lithography and some art history and philosophy and things like that too.
So, like Americans can take classes there, right? Like you're an international student.
Yeah, I mean, I moved to Berlin just to move there, kind of without a real plan. And then
right.
I met an artist, my friend Christian Pilz, and he was studying there. And he kind of, I wanted to meet more artists. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know how to be an artist, anything. So I thought, okay, maybe if I start taking classes at this art school, that might be a start to meeting some people and seeing what's going on. So
that's great. Well, you were in the right place in Berlin to learn about what it means to be an artist, and so that was a smart move from Chicago to Berlin.
Yes.
And now you're in New York. So all right, so thank you everybody for joining. I just also wanted to say one more thing, that Daniel is doing this voluntarily. Normally we would pay, but Berlin Collective is a startup company, and so we have actually kind of like when a performer um, does a performance at the end, like a little bit of a hat. So we have this Venmo. And I just wanted to tell that. I'm going to tell that at the beginning and the end. So it's Daniel hyphen, or you could say dash, Kingery. So I'll also type that out. And the PayPal is also hello@danielkingery.com. So anything, you know, that you'd want to donate is absolutely fine. But this is a free event. So just to let you know. Okay, so let's get started with talking about your amazing paintings. So behind you, you have the Prince and who's the other band?
That's Roxy Music.
Roxy Music.
We could start over here, kind of. I've got the phone on my easel, so these are some kind of the somewhat more recent ones that I've been working on. I'll kind of enter and exit the frame so you can see the paintings. That's
okay,
really
that works.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to start with a question or if I should just.
Yeah, so I can see what they are. They're like, you know, your music, right? Paintings of your music. Now, but are they prints or, I mean, I know, but I'm asking this for people that don't know about it. I know some of the answers to my questions, I think. But for instance, like the text, is that painted on? Like what are we looking at exactly?
Right. So it's all, I mean, you could see that I'm working on one right here, so you can see kind of how I do it a little bit. And I mean, just the physical way I make the paintings are that I have vinyl cut for the letters.
Yes.
Make a file. They're all computer, I would say they're computer aided paintings. You know, the central part of it, the album cover, which is always a portrait, is done freehand in oil. And the rest of it is acrylic. So I use the vinyl that I have cut. I make an Adobe Illustrator file, a vector file, and so the vinyl's cut. And basically, I put those vinyl stickers on over the paint color I want, and then I seal it, paint over the surface, and peel them off. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So that's physically hard.
So that way you have the type done like in exactly is it New Havel? What is it? The font?
Helvetica Neue. Yeah. And
Helvetica Neue. Yeah, that's what I thought.
People, I've been seeing people arriving. Thank you, Peter, Florian, everyone who's coming today to visit. Thank you so much. And thank you, Nicole, and for Boom Collective.
Oh, yeah.
That's really wonderful.
This is great. I can't see that many people, but at the end, I see a few people like Lori and now I see Anne and Javier and different people. So okay, awesome. Thank you.
So let's see. Where were we?
Yeah, so we're talking about what we're looking at.
Yes.
So I think when you first look at the paintings, are they also on a board? They're on a hard surface, correct?
They are on linen. They're on linen.
Oh, they're on canvas. Okay.
Yeah, they're on linen.
Right. So when you look at them, you're thinking, okay, this is music, but you can't actually see that, you know, you can't hear the music, obviously. So how do you pick these, you know, these images to paint?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, the origin for the series, maybe I'll just get into that a little bit, how I came to this.
Yeah.
They're all just, I think we haven't quite touched on this yet. So I consider all of them to be a form of self-portraiture, and I consider almost all of my work to be in some way a form of self-portraiture or autobiography. It's, you know, it's a way for me to tell my story, and I think that's, you know, I think that's a pretty common thing among artists, that, you know, you're telling something about who you are. And so these, if you put them together, tell like different, they're kind of like clues or allusions to my own personal life, to my biography.
Yes.
And, I came across them I came to this idea in 2014 originally, and it's actually when I first signed up for Spotify, and I'd already started to do paintings. I'll show you some other paintings here too that are, I've got other series going that are all related, that all involve text. They usually involve pop cultural figures. In some ways, a kind of a screen or a proxy, a stand-in for myself. And in combination with the text tells something about my story. That's the basic idea behind them. And the first ones I did were Prince and Bowie, and I took the screenshots in 2014, and I've got so many paintings in my backlog of paintings I have to make. I didn't get to actually paint those first two until late in 2015, and then a few months later, both of them died. It was really
But
weird.
that's crazy.
Those were the first
Um,
screenshots I'd made, and I just set up for Spotify, and I was listening to it, and I looked at my phone, and it was on a lock screen, and I saw Prince from his self-titled album, was "I Want to Be Your Lover," and it looked so iconic. It looked so iconic to me. It looked beautiful, and I just took a screenshot of it, and then I started to take screenshots of music, and I had a lot of those experiences I think that everyone has where uh, you're listening to music and it seems to be speaking to the emotions you're experiencing right then at that moment. It seems there's like a
right.
synchronicity or something to it. So when I would have those moments, I would take screenshots and I just collected them, and then I would go through it, and really based on intuition, on feeling, on prayer, I would just get this feeling like, okay, this one,
That's what I was going to ask you also, because they're not just music that you like. They're moments, they're bookmarks of your life and your life experience. So
Yeah,
that's how
correct.
they become the portraits.
That's right. So it's not like this is my playlist for my life, or these are my
Right.
favorite songs. Exactly
Exactly.
like you said. So it's more, and I've chosen for kind of convenience sake to stick to albums from the 70s, 80s, and 60s for this particular series. I mean, I painted Rihanna, I painted Nicki Minaj, I painted Kanye, I painted a lot of contemporary, musicians and pop. There's Richard. I'll show you Richard Gere here in a second. So I've not only done music from this period, and it's by far not all I listen to, but I've decided for consistency's sake to sort of stick to that. I always buy the album. Either I have the album as a vinyl record, or I buy it and I paint the album cover from that. I don't paint it from a computer or a printout or something. I paint it from the
Right.
actual album cover.
So they're not actually the ones that are in the phone.
Well, it's all based on real screenshots I made where I had a moment I was like, oh yeah, this song is speaking to something in particular about how I'm feeling, something about my life, something about my biography. I'll take a screenshot, and then if I own the album, I'll use that to paint from, or I'll just buy it at a record store on eBay, and I'll paint from the actual vinyl, 12
Right.
cover. But anyway, a lot of the artists that I'm referencing, if it's Roxy Music or you see Prince, I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
him there in the
Yeah, I
background.
can. I have
Uh,
that album.
so maybe I will kind of like zoom in a little bit there. But anyway, I don't
Yeah.
know if it's a little bit too shaky to move around too much. But anyway, so the songs aren't the most famous ones by those artists. It's not necessarily even from their most famous records. It's the
Right.
songs. It's the songs that for me say the most about how I'm like who I am, how I'm feeling. Really, it's really about emotions. It's about the self. It's about the kinds of emotions that we all experience, and it's kind of referencing the kinds of emotions that we experience when we listen to music, and it's trying to capture that in a still image.
I think it's also interesting where they are in the song. So like, where the dial is, or like also, don't you have different battery lives also in the paintings?
Yeah, yeah, those are really and
How does that work?
yeah, so those are occasionally I've altered those, but almost always it's exactly what was happening during the screenshot. And I've noticed that those all become little indicators of this kind of moment that's captured then, of that moment that you're listening to music. Just like with a photograph, a screenshot's the same kind of thing. It's
Yeah,
the you know it's this moment that's just captured, and it's a fleeting ephemeral thing, and then now it's
exactly.
now it's enlarged, and
Right. It's a
it,
snapshot in a way.
yeah, it's kind of a snapshot of a certain moment of listening to that music. And so, yeah, if I was in my home network, the Prince one, I was in Berlin actually, and I was back in Berlin in 2017, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, and I bought a card from a local kiosk, and it happened to be like a Turkish cell phone provider. So it has this Al Yildiz, and otherwise I had Verizon previously, and it has the time, where in the song it is, what the volume is, if I'm in my home Wi-Fi, if I'm in if my Bluetooth is connected, all of that's there, and it's just kind of all these things are kind of like, I'm a huge fan of James Joyce, and I feel like
Yeah.
they're these sort of like hidden little clues or illusions, or they all potentially have significance or meaning in this context when you isolate this moment and you enlarge it and you sort of freeze it into a work of painting.
Um, can we see the paintings a little closer? Is it possible?
Sure, I'm going to try to flip the camera and yeah, so
Yeah,
that's what.
and also, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Oh, perfect.
And
And
yeah,
also,
people don't, you don't see this from, you don't see this as much from the, um, the images that you see online, that they're really painterly. You can see all of
exactly, you
my,
see all the brush strokes.
yeah, you see that it's a painting, and I don't project my images and then trace them or anything like that. I try to, get a little bit of a head start by mapping out where some key points are. A lot of times just by math. But then
But you
other
don't
than
grid it out, do you?
I do not grid it out. No, no. I try to get a few points, and if I'm really, because I used to never even do that. I would just paint totally freehand, and somehow that ended up working okay. But I had a few instances where I just wasted time because like I did a painting once of Rihanna, and I just painted her head too small, and I only noticed after I photographed, and I had to go and redo. I just don't want to waste too much time.
You don't want to
So
paint Rihanna's head too small.
you don't want to paint Rihanna's head too small. So in order to save a little bit of time, I started to take some key points like where's the shoulder, where's the chin, where's
Right.
the top of the head, where's the sides of the head, and from that,
Exactly. To map it out, right?
yeah. And there's always it's a learning process. It takes some correction. If I had projected, I wouldn't learn as much about looking and like, okay, this isn't looking right. Why? And then you have to go back and find that out. It's a painterly problem you have to solve, and you learn a lot about seeing, about painting from doing that rather than, if you trace from a projection, you have a head start and you don't have to worry about that, which is easy and nice. And I understand why people do it, but for me, I would feel demotivated to make the painting. I
Right.
think.
Well,
Yeah.
that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. I mean, these are pictures, these are images, visual images that we're all familiar with. We listen to our music, but the
Yeah.
thing that's so interesting and what makes them really uh, conceptual and fascinating is that they're so personal.
Yeah.
Like they could at first look very impersonal, but they are very personal. They have to do exactly with the moment in your life and
Yeah.
your connection with it. So in order for you to, I guess, have the experience of painting it, I would imagine you wouldn't want to like project it, and you want to like, I don't know, that's your means to get to, as something satisfactory for you at the end.
Yeah, it makes it more personal, makes it more your own.
Yeah.
I'm not going for photorealism specifically. If you look at the original album covers and what I've done, you'll see, you can all next to each other and see things I got wrong or whatever, and that's fine. I've learned to just like I like to
Right.
I like to paint. I like the painterliness of it. I love the history of European portrait painting. You and I have talked personally about some of the Indian
Right.
work, and there's a lot of my influences are more contemporary.
Right. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
But
Like for
I love portraiture. I love the history of portrait painting in this kind of like European, sometimes English tradition. People like Sir Thomas Lawrence, and I love just like the painterliness. Velasquez or Manet or different people. I love seeing their hand. I want to see that. I want to see that painting. I want to see the hand. I want to see the
right.
mark. And
I
yeah,
No, I see the aesthetical, like that reference as aesthetic, but I also see the conceptual side, like we're getting a gaze into, or a voyeur into your personal history.
yeah.
So that could be, do you feel like Barbara Kruger or Jenny Holzer, some of those artists dealing with like the gaze or being direct are connected to your work?
Yes, yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the past,
Yeah.
and I think yeah, a lot of my kind of more contemporary influences are people who worked in a more conceptual mode. A lot of people who are from the kind of like '80s pictures generation through the '90s, sort of quote unquote sort of identity artists. People like Felix Gonzalez Torres. And then from the '80s, people work with Tex. Louise Lawler and Jenny Holzer, Barbara Kruger.
Jack
Jack,
Goldstein too, right?
a huge touch point for me. And one of the things I realized, I was thinking some years ago, I went through a huge Jack Goldstein phase, and I still, he's still one of my favorites. And I was thinking, like, why do I love these paintings so much? And I came to the conclusion, I'm like, they're great because they're gorgeous, and they're really smart. So I was like, that's what I want. I want to make a painting that's just gorgeous to look at and it's smart. And
Yeah.
the other moments, or there's a lot of key moments that sort of led to this body of work, and it all came together for me after moving to New York in 2013. I went through a series of personally sort of traumatic events at the end of my time in Berlin, and that, you know, that was, you know, were instituted or whatever, so a change in my work that has been lasting and continue. You know, I've got plans for many, many, many more. Not just the iPhone series. I have a lot of other paintings in the
So you
work.
didn't make these paintings at all in Berlin?
No, I did not. When I was in Berlin, there were, of course, like steps that led to what I'm doing now, but I was really searching for my voice while I was there. And even though I was exhibiting a lot and doing a lot of things.
Yeah, you curated a lot of shows and exhibited and a lot. Yeah.
I did a lot, and I didn't totally progress in my career the way I had hoped. And I think that I've come to the conclusion one of the main reasons for that was I've discovered I really came into my voice since being in New York. That's when I really things came together, and a lot of really, and I think this is true for a lot of people. A lot of, you know, you said you could see this as really impersonal, and that's you know, always interesting because it came from such an emotional place. That's why these started. It came from a really intense need to say certain things about who I am, why I am the person who I am, what it means to be me, you know, as it is for everyone. That's why those things hopefully speak to
That's
people.
why it's so interesting. I think it's so riveting too, because it makes us want to know more about those experiences. What were you experiencing that, you know, at that time? And like, what was that? And, you know, that's like totally private, but it's something interesting to think about, even hypothetically.
Yeah. And I think about it to a certain extent, definitely. And there were kind of two main sort of, I guess you could call them traumatic events in my life that made me really sort of like rethink not just what I'm doing as an artist, but who I am as a person, or made me really examine that more. And so one of them was somebody who I knew was living under an assumed identity, committing. Yeah. I knew someone who was living under an assumed identity and was stealing artworks from a gallery that no longer exists, so nobody worry. Names being named, nothing like that. Anyway, he committed suicide. And I was asked to help to kind of figure out some of the stuff that happened, and I had to look through his emails for this gallery, or I, you know, was paid. Part of my job was to look through his emails, and so I kind of delved into the mind of this person who was like living a double existence, and he was a different person to different people, and really made me think more deeply about like, what is the self? You know, how can you be more than one person? And this I was, and you know, he's not the only one out there who has done that kind of thing. I've heard tons of stories since then about similar kinds of things. It was really a jarring experience, and it really affected me a lot, and really made me kind of a little bit depressed and confused. And I
can understand.
You know, that really, and I realized that one of the main reasons why it made me really kind of depressed and confused was because I hadn't done enough work on myself, knowing who I was. And so I was more kind of vulnerable to this, you know, depression or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I realized, you know, as an artist, really one of the most important things, and it's true of any human being, is like, you have to know who you are. And so I set out specifically to do work on that through, you know, reading philosophy and ultimately having a lot of really personal spiritual experiences along the way that have led me on the path that I am now. And then the second thing was I was in a relationship for 10 years, and I went through a really terrible breakup just by virtue of the fact that it was such a long relationship at the end of my time in Berlin. And, you know, I was like I had to leave the apartment I'd been in for a long, long time. And I was living in this like back courtyard apartment, ground floor in Neukölln. In the dark, it was the darkest summer in Berlin history since 1945 on record.
Oh my God.
The sunlight.
That makes it even better.
You know, this was all real. And I started to read Popism by Warhol. And that really spoke to me. And I had a number of revelations from that book that were about, which I've written down, maybe I should reference.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I did think of Warhol when I was looking at the, almost like this, you know, screens.
Yeah. He was a huge...
There's got a lot of references, yeah.
I came to reading that book and then reading other books by him or other things about him. I came to a totally different understanding of his work. And I realized how in a lot of ways his work was really personal. Like when you learn about him, he was extremely sick as a child,
Yeah.
and he had to be home as like an 8-year-old, and was when he had St. Vitus dance, and his mom brought him all of these coloring books and celebrity gossip magazines, and he would fill in the colors, and he would read those celebrity magazines and imagine this glamorous life.
Right.
And
No
that's
wonder he turned out, yeah. No
that's a
wonder
thing,
he evolved in that way.
and he even said in Popism, he said a few things that really stuck with me. He talks one about how he kind of saw himself in Marilyn, like she was this kind of blonde, ditz, whatever, that people didn't take seriously. That's how people saw him too. They were like, oh, he's kind of this like bimbo with this like silver wig, you know what I mean?
Right.
Didn't take him seriously. He really identified with the way people didn't take Marilyn seriously. And so the way of Marilyn was kind of a portrait of him. And he said specifically, if you want to know about me, look at my paintings.
Right. So, yeah, I just want to recap for some people that have just come in a little bit. We're talking about, with Daniel, about how his paintings are also, they're portraits. So they're conceptual portraiture and self-portraiture, even more specifically, about his life and about the time and the actual moment in, in a bookmark in his life on a personal experience. So, and he's also talking, you're talking about how you want to, reveal aspects of yourself to look for yourself through your work. Because you had in the past experiences where other artists weren't able to do that and weren't as lucky and didn't have the time to do, other people didn't do that. And I think that art tells you a lot. So it shows you a lot, your work. And I really think that this is anyway, so as you were saying, I just wanted to kind of recap for some people that just came in.
Oh, that's no problem.
Yeah. So, no, so another thing that I wanted to ask you, does now their music, but are they called sound pieces, or is there sound, or they're mute, right? I know they're mute, I would imagine. But people are asking that, so that's why I wanted to.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I actually had, when I first started doing these, I had considered, and maybe I will do something like that someday, where you could actually have some headphones by each painting and listen to the song. I actually have considered that, believe it or not. For whatever that's worth. I haven't actually done that yet, but that is a possibility. They're paintings, they're silent, but I think that's one of the things that people have commented to me when I've been fortunate enough to have been shown these, that they've said, oh, people are like, want to hear it, and they want to like push the pause or push the play or change the volume.
Yes.
Touch screen that you, I guess, can't touch.
Because I feel like it's the sound without the sound, so it's even more mute.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Yeah, it's a painting is by definition in some ways silent. So yeah, taking something and kind of it's abstracting it in a way.
Yes.
It's not. It's referencing. It's a visual representation that's referencing listening to certain songs, and it's capturing a certain moment of listening to that song, put into a different medium, which is painting. Exactly.
Well, so I wanted to ask you one other question, and then maybe we can open it up for some questions.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you about, we met in Berlin. Daniel actually had a studio in Kreuzberg, really close to where I lived. Mm-hmm. And I was like blown away with the studio visit that we had taken some students to a studio, and that's how we met initially. And so how is your work? You talked about, obviously your life transitions and everything, coming to New York and finding or feeling more like, finding your voice more in New York. Mm-hmm. But what was it like in Berlin?
So, yeah, I was, I'm not like, disowning the work that I made previously, but a lot of it was still, like I said, it was searching for my voice. And I wanted to come to something like what I'm doing now. I was always looking for a way to approach painting in a sort of a different way, or to, I see a lot of, maybe you see it the same way. I see a lot of divide in the art world between painters and conceptual artists. And I've kind of somehow instinctively rejected that division from the beginning, for myself and in general.
Right.
So I've wanted to find a way of painting that was, you know, sort of conceptual and personal. And a lot of the ideas did come directly from things that I was doing in Berlin, including the collages, which have continued, where I was doing collages as kind of a way to sort of experiment with imagery and try different things, get kind of loose. And that ended up, I wanted to find a way to enlarge those and make those into a painting, which I started to do after coming to New York in 2013. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those involve text also. And so that's partly how this came together, is like making collages and then saying, you know what, this is, I could, you know, this is really a painting just like screaming to be made.
I love that. Screaming to be made.
And also the kind of like, I started to experiment in Berlin with these, with chants, and with sort of serendipity, synchronicity, things like that. And even though my paintings are well, you know, in advance, I know in a sense what I'm going to do, the ideas and the imagery still come from this kind of like, you know, intuitive moment of like, oh, this is striking something kind of emotionally, spiritually, it's hitting a chord in my heart, and that's why I'm making it. And it comes, you know, through chance. Like, you know, I just happened to see, you know, I just signed up for Spotify and I saw that image of Prince and I was like, wow, this is such an iconic, just in the context, in the frame. And I love having a painting within, you know, I'm creating a context for the painting every time. And I love to be able to create that frame, create that context, and create that kind of relationship.
Right. So it's really interesting. I mean, have you ever thought about doing a painting? Would you even consider this, or is it not really something that you'd be interested in doing? Like, if say I had a song that was personal to me, so this is all, it's self-portraiture to you, but it's not something that you would do for another person, right? Because it's or is that like a different project?
Oh, I would, and I have. And I've only done a few so far, but I've offered it, and it's available if anyone wants it. You can commission your own, you know, portraits based on, you know, music you're listening to or whatever. And
that's really cool. I think that's like really cool, because you're making me think about it so differently, and all of us think of it so in such a personal way, which just everything, you know, when it's personal, it makes it so much more interesting. So yeah, so maybe we should open up the questions now. Sure. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about your work, or?
Well, maybe real quick, just another sort of personal note. I got the idea for doing that. It could also be about somebody else. When I did one painting, there's only a few of them that I'm keeping. I'm going to keep the Alan Vega one over here as a present for me and my wife. But for our recent wedding. But
yeah, congratulations, by the way.
And I also did one that was a tribute to my brother, who died in 2012 from cancer. And he was my half brother. He would visit us, and he came one time, and he looked like Michael Jackson. And my sister and I thought that he was Michael Jackson. We got out of the car screaming like, "Oh my God, it's Michael Jackson!" What? So I was painting a thriller that was a kind of tribute to him. And then I thought, you know what, I could do this for other people too. You know, I could make, it could be, these kind of like rules or parameters could potentially be applied to anybody's life.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Maybe when you you can open up, maybe do you want to read, look through questions if anyone has questions, and I'm gonna like show a few. I'm gonna like move some paintings around so people can see a couple other examples, and I'll answer.
Can you show us that David Bowie one in the back too?
Yeah. I'll turn the camera around. Yeah, so that one was specifically about moving to New York, and you know, for Bowie, that song was about him moving to Berlin, so it was a really appropriate one.
That's so funny. It's like you in reverse.
Yeah, exactly. And cruising a new town. That's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and it's so personal and so interesting. And I guess it's like the new record collection, the new like vinyl collection, right? Your playlist.
Yeah. The other thing that people have said to me, people have said, "Oh, these are like, you know, fan art or something." And I thought, yeah, actually, you know what? They are fan art. I love it. That's another thing that, you know, just to reference Warhol yet again. Another thing that Warhol said was, you know, paint what you love. and that's
Right.
what that's what I do. I paint what I love. I love
That's
music.
what you have to do.
You know,
You
you
have
got
to, you
yeah.
have to love it.
Yeah, so the art, and I want to see them big. Everything's so small on the phone now. I just like a desire to I want to see them large. I want to see the album cover low, even bigger than the record. I just want to see it. That's why I make them.
Yeah. So we have a question.
All right.
Thank you so much. What are you working on now? And this is from Javier Barrera. Will you continue this series?
Yeah, this series is continuing. You could see the one that I'm doing. I'm working on this one, which is from he's one of the less famous ones. I'm also keeping this one. But I love him. It's Alan Vega, who is in the band Suicide, and you can see I have the actual album cover right there that I'm using.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
But that's a present for my wife and for myself, because it's about kind of falling in love again and the beautiful experience of that. So, and I've got more planned in the iPhone series. The bigger ones, by the way, are like an iPhone 8 size. These older ones are an iPhone 4 size. That's why they're different sizes. I'm going to continue the larger ones. I have a whole group of that planned out. There's probably going to be 17 total of the larger ones still in total, probably.
Okay.
And then
oh, sorry.
I'm continuing other series which are related to some of the ones you see back here. I've done all of these that have to do with, have text, pop culture, things like that in them as well, and are also autobiographical. I have a few more in that series that I'm still going to make, and I have a brand new series I'm about to start, which I'm calling Transparencies. It's been in my mind for a long time, like 7 years.
I can't wait to see that. We have another question. It says, painting is slow in nature. It's always a bit behind the time because painting is not as quick, for instance, as photography. How do you think this relates to the screenshots, which are very immediate?
That's a good question. Yeah, I've thought about that. I've at times I've been also, painting can be fast, and sometimes I've been lucky and it's been really fast. Like actually, like the one here, the one, you can see this one I did in like a single day. So that
in one day.
Yeah. So I've done a few that have been incredibly fast, but then some have taken forever. Like the Prince took way longer, and the Roxy Music took way longer.
Is there a Suzanne Vega one or something? Somebody keeps mentioning that.
Oh, it's Alan Vega.
Alan Vega. Sorry.
That's Alan Vega from the band Suicide, who also has a solo career. Who's an amazing artist, visual artist as well. He's a really, really awesome musician and visual artist. But so anyway, sometimes it has gone fast, and sometimes it's gone slow, and I've learned to kind of cede control of that. But it is an interesting thing. Like now, this series has been going on for me since 2014, 2015, and Apple has since changed the format of how you see your home screen, so you don't actually even see this anymore. But for me,
of course, always the technology is getting upgraded or changed.
Yeah, the format's always being changed, and they're always tweaking. Once you start to pay attention to that, they're always tweaking. I've become fine-tuned to Apple's design through doing this, and they're always tweaking things and whatever. But for me, it's Warhol was doing Elvis, some years after that movie, the Flaming Star movie came out. He was doing the Elvis as the cowboy or whatever.
Right.
It doesn't have to be one-to-one. This is happening at this moment. And my paintings tend to, since I've come to New York and started to work in this way, have a very long gestation period. But there's a little bit of a paradox there that they're both kind of like immediate and of the present moment.
Right.
I see them as incorporating three elements of time. One of them is like the somewhat recent past of the time that the records came out, the very recent past of the time that the screenshot was made, and then the more expansive past of the history of portraiture, which goes back even, thousands of years.
Yes. Well, I was saying to you earlier that I would love to go to the portrait gallery in Washington and, see these classical and then come across yours next to it and be like, what is going on here? That element of surprise, like looking at portraiture in a different way.
Yeah.
So I just love that. And do you call these is this the official title, or am I just reading off your website, the iPhone self-portraits?
Yeah, that's what I call them.
Okay.
Usually. Yeah.
As the project, the name of them. Yeah. And so I know you work in a lot of different ways too, and everybody can check out his website.
Mm-hmm.
His website, he has films, and actually, really, you should go to the writing section because I really dove in there today, and there's just a lot of richness. I was really
Thank
excited
you.
to read more about your experience, and you said that you came up with some of that writing because you had recently read some of Mike Kelly's
Yeah.
writing, and so that inspired you, and that it seems very inspired. So it was a pleasure to read those and the films, and then he also has collages, and there's a lot of things, and we actually are featuring some of his work that's available on the Berlin Collective website. So that's very exciting. So it's Berlin Collective without an E at the end.com.
Yes. And,
And it's very exciting. So we have a pop-up shop that's kind of going in conjunction with our talk series. And Daniel's the first one in our virtual studio visit. So that's
yeah.
great.
Beginning.
Yeah, I also, is there anything else you wanted to say? I just was going to wrap this up.
Sure.
But I wanted to, if there are any other questions, you can type them in.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say, as I said at the beginning, that if you, wanted to make a donation, the artists are doing this for free. But normally we would pay them. But if you wanted to give a small donation, you're welcome to go to his Venmo account and make any kind of donation. It's kind of like the hat, we're passing around like at a musical performance or something.
Daniel minus Kingery at Venmo.
There you go.
If you want to, but of course, I'm sure that a lot of the, everyone here is really mostly friends and stuff like that. But of course, anything's appreciated and welcomed.
Oh my God, look at that piece.
In terms of the writing, Mike Kelly and also Robert Smithson, and a lot of that came from what I was describing earlier in terms of trying to really understand a lot better who I am as a person, as an artist, and trying to define that in writing, through reading things and through then like trying to express my thoughts in writing. And Mike Kelly was really specific about, he wanted to kind of own the discourse around his work.
Yeah.
And I liked that. And same with Smithson, they really wanted to, in a way, kind of have the final say. It's not that other people can't say things about it, but I like that of like putting your own
exactly your writing to
you write about it as well, and not just leave it only to others.
I think Agnes Martin does that very well too.
A
lot of artists do, but I think that it makes a lot of sense with your work in particular, because your work is text-based also.
Absolutely.
So,
it has, like you said, that you don't necessarily aren't it takes a second to kind of like, wait, why is this a self-portrait?
That's what I like. That's what I like about the element of surprise. And in the end, what you end up doing is showing us something about ourselves, even though it's your self-portrait.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I hope that, the kinds of experiences or, thoughts, feelings, that's the way, I mean, for me, that's the way that music itself works, which is you listen to a song and the reason why it strikes a chord with you.
Right. There's a kind of a nostalgia, I guess, but also like a part of you. It's like your inner playlist.
Yeah, a lot of that came too from experiences in Berlin, which were with friends, where we became really obsessed with doing karaoke or like having like impromptu like dance parties when we'd show up somewhere and we put on, Kanye or Beyonce or whatever.
We love impromptu dance parties.
Yeah, and it was really fun. We were really like expressing ourselves through the other music, and the same with the karaoke. You're inhabiting a persona and using that other person's words and music to kind of express your own emotions or story or something like that. And those are really experiences in Berlin that also directly led to what I'm doing now.
That's great. It's really great to get this insight on your work. I'm sure everyone is, really appreciative. I'm speaking for them because they can only text. But if anybody has any other last questions, but I wanted to say, this is our first virtual studio visit, and we are going to have, I think, quite a few that will be coming up, and we'll be announcing them in our social media, and we hope that you will join us again. And it's a great platform to go into people's studios, which is really a privilege. So we really appreciate that. And it was a great visit. Everybody says thank you. Joni is saying thank you to you both. Thank you. Great visit. Thank you so much from Anne. So
Yeah,
everyone,
that's
so
great. Thanks.
just reading what people are saying.
Thanks everybody for showing up. Thank you for hosting, Nicole,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
for supportive and really delving into the work and what it's about. For me, that's the most interesting thing about it. I love to talk about it. So.
And it's great because you can get people from Berlin we're on right now. I saw my friend Pascal was there, who's a big music DJ fan. We've got someone from Paris. We've got the people from all over. So it's a great opportunity. All right. Well,
all right.
Stay safe. Stay home, everybody, and stay safe.
Yes, that's right. Be safe. Take care.
We'll see you next time.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.